Hello, and welcome to the Next Great Car Era, a podcast by EVTUNERS. I'm your host, Daniel Martin, and today I'm joined by Ryan Christopher, or as many of you know him on Instagram, Stuck in the 90s. Ryan is somewhat of a legend, with a 90s car collection containing a Supra, an RX-7, a GTR, and an NSX. He also owns a Tesla Model S Plaid and a Model X, and he takes all of his cars to the local drag strip. Ryan's most recent project, though, has been a second Supra, and this time he rebuilt it with a Tesla motor and battery pack. After that success, and true to the Supra name, he is now rebuilding its next iteration to unlock more speed and performance. In this episode, we discuss how Ryan got interested in cars, the details of the Supra build, his goals for the second version, and the EV community that's growing so fast. Hear all that and more right now. Enjoy. Right in. Ryan, thanks so much for carving the time out of the day and chatting with me. Maybe before we dive into it, could you give us a little bit of info and background about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Ryan Christopher. I live on the big island of Hawaii. I have a background in commercial real estate. I get a lot of people asking me, oh, are you an electrical engineer or automotive background? And nope, I don't have any background in either one of those. Just somebody who's determined. And when I put my mind to something, I don't like to give up. So.
Well, I can imagine that in real estate, there's some amount of project management, right? Keeping all of the plates spinning, and that's also helpful when building cars because there's so many components. So maybe we'll say that's the connection.
Absolutely. There you
go. So speaking of cars, you have like an awesome collection. Help me out. Where is it landed now? There's at least a handful that I know about.
Yeah, I started off, with the JDM stuff. That was my initial interest. So I have a Mark IV Supra, also a original NSX, R34 Skyline, FD RX-7. Also have a Nissan Skyline Hakoska, which is the 70s Nissan Skylines.
Oh, cool.
And then the EV Supra, Model X that my wife drives, and a Plaid that I drive.
Do you like all of these cars equally in their own way, or do you have some favorites?
Yeah, I definitely have some favorites. They do things differently. I like to I tell people, I don't want a hamburger every day, right? Every now and then you want a hot dog or something else, right? So they all do different things. They all have strengths and weaknesses. So it's nice to have an assortment.
Definitely. Right tool for the right job, or right car for the right day.
Absolutely.
The Nissan, the 70s one, that's a bit of an outlier. Are you kind of venturing into being stuck in the 70s, or?
I get accused more of not being stuck in the 90s anymore. People saying that I've lost my roots and that sort of thing. Tesla stuff. But I checked kind of all the boxes of the 90s cars that I absolutely felt like I needed. There's definitely still a lot of 90s cars that I love that I would enjoy having, but the return on investment at this point in buying another car is just it's getting hard to justify having to pay to register and insure the vehicles and maintain them with how little I get to drive them, and you go and add another vehicle. So I'm probably done adding cars, but I do love a lot of 70s stuff. I would love an old Z, like a 240 or 280Z.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, probably not.
Yeah, for sure. So in case, for those who don't know, and this will be in the show notes and everything, your Instagram handle is Stuck in the 90s. So that's correct. That's the joke there.
Yeah.
People are going, why do you laugh so much at that? Yeah, that's why. I'm simple humor.
Yep.
I'd like to hear how you got into this hobby, but beforehand, speaking of all of these different cars and different types of driving and choosing what you're going to do that particular day, what do you participate in with these cars? Or just joy riding, or do you go to racetrack or car shows? A little bit of everything. What are you taking these awesome machines out for?
Yeah, I definitely try to do everything that's out there available. Living on the Big Island of Hawaii does make it a little bit harder. We do luckily have a drag strip and a very small SCCA course
Okay.
on, but that's it. We don't have a big road course or anything like that. But yeah, I definitely do a fair amount of drag racing, SCCA racing. If I can find a street race, I might participate in that as well, under the right circumstances. Also do a lot of events here. They do a lot of cruises, and also shows, cars and coffees, that sort of thing. They're smaller here, just because it's a smaller population, but They're a really good community here of car people. Everybody has to kind of stick together, considering there's not a ton of cars.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like a good community though. Cars and
It
coffee
is.
is like I think the cream of the crop when it comes to events, because it seems like they tend to be a little bit more collaborative and collegial than like a competitive car show or something like that.
Yeah, we don't get any competitive car shows on Big Island that I'm aware of. Those are mostly over on Oahu.
Hmm.
But the car shows that we have here are really nice because they're very family friendly. There's a ton of vendors and just local food, and it's much more of a family event than what I'm used to back when I lived on the mainland, where it's a car show and maybe there's some merchandise sales, but that's about it. It's really strictly the cars. Here they're selling, all sorts of homemade food and soaps and clothes and, just all these pop-up vendors. So it makes it fun to be able to go with the family and walk around and look at that stuff instead of just cars. Because when you live on the island for a couple of years, you've kind of seen most of the cars that are here. There's, not many new ones that pop.
I'm sold. That sounds like an awesome event.
Yeah, it's nice.
I imagine that the cruises are pretty nice too, since Hawaii is known to be quite gorgeous. I mean, you can ask for a better.
It's hard to find a place on this island that isn't beautiful.
So then, getting into the collection, what was the genesis of the '90s cars for you? How'd you get into it?
So when I was, I want to say about 14, my older brother, who's about 10 years older than me, took me for a ride in his Mark III Supra. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a Supra. And boy, he just about killed us in that thing. It was an amazing ride. And when I got home and after, I kind of calmed down, I was thinking, man, that was awesome. I better not let my parents find out about that ride. But
yeah, we stopped at every stop sign.
Yeah. He didn't know what he was doing, or maybe he did. I don't know. But scary ride. It was a lot of fun, but it definitely sparked my interest in turbo cars and specifically Supras. So that's kind of where it started.
Cool, and it just went from there.
Yeah. When my first few cars, I messed around with some trucks and some Hondas, and it was always, lift it or lower it. But nothing too much. I was keeping it relatively stock, nothing too wild, not really messing with motor stuff that was above my abilities and both physically and financially. And yeah, then I got out of it for a while, and worked on business and family stuff, and then ventured back into it about 10 years ago when I tracked down my Supra the 2JZ Supra that I have right now, not the EV one.
Yeah. So that was the beginning of the collection.
Yeah, that was the first car I picked up. It was about 11 years ago now.
Cool. Then when did EVs blip on your radar?
When the Model S came out, I think maybe this is just my opinion, but I think before it was if you drove an EV, it had to be ugly and slow. That's what EVs were. True. And when the Model S came along, it was like, wow, this is a good looking car and it's quick.
Mm-hmm.
That got my attention. And then we purchased our first Tesla about 5 or 6 years ago. We purchased a used P85 and I loved it. It's just, they're amazing daily vehicles that also, will hold their own on a track against other stock vehicles.
Yeah. What about the Roadster? That came before the S. Had you seen that at all?
I had never seen one in person. I definitely heard about it online and seen some pictures of it, but I had never seen one in person. And probably back then I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between that and a Lotus anyways.
Yeah.
Heard it since they're, very similar.
Exactly. Yeah. The Model S is for me as well. That's when you actually started seeing the Teslas around.
Yeah. Yep. Just finally a good looking EV, and you really couldn't argue with the performance of them. I really didn't think there was any major downside to them, unless you're, one of these people that need to travel long distances across the country. At that time, that was tough. It's a different story now.
Yeah, not so much of an issue now. It just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, just a little bit of planning.
Yeah. But like you were referencing earlier, right car for the right drive as well. Like if you don't want to spend that extra time, then that's the time to take, the Supra or the Skyline or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is I don't want to drive any of those cars more than an hour or two anyways. They are loud and uncomfortable. So I have no interest in taking any of those cars for a really long drive. The Tesla really does that. And the truth is, most of these new Teslas with 300, 400 miles worth of range, that's what, 4 hours of driving. I want out for half an hour, 45 minutes after driving that far. Maybe I'm getting old, but after that amount of driving, I want to stretch my legs, get something to eat, use the restroom. So clearly I don't run into that living on an island here. I've never once used a public charging station in the 5 years I've owned an EV.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, just charge it from home and it does. I've actually tried to use a couple charging stations just to top off when I go down to drag race, and I can't figure out how to use them. It's too confusing. So maybe it's because it's a shell one and they're making it harder. I don't know, but I can't figure it out.
Not a Tesla supercharger.
They don't have any supercharging stations on the Big Island. I think they might one or two over on Oahu, but not on Big Island.
Huh, that's surprising. Someone needs to tweet Elon that.
Yeah, yep.
To be honest, I've never used a non-Tesla charger either.
Okay.
The Tesla chargers are easy because it is attached to your account and you take the charger out and you just press the go button and it opens the door, plugs it in and charges your card. So you don't have to mess with it. Don't have to create an account and log in the credit card or anything like that. Probably will have to do it eventually, but these ones that we have here, you got to download the app and put a credit card on it, and then there has to be some sort of handshake between the charger and your car, and that's where I always end up with the issue. It starts to charge for about 2 seconds and then it disconnects, and I've kind of given up at this point. I'm still hoping to. I have given up as far as needing to charge. We don't need to charge. I just plan ahead and charge a car up if I'm going for a long drive. But I'm hoping to be able to top off maybe at another Tesla owner's house or something like that before I drag race. Because the track is about an hour away from me. So every time I go down to drag race the Plaid, I'm already down, 50 or 60 miles of range, which I've heard hurts your time. So a little bit. I understand that as well. What time are you getting in the Plaid? How is that drag racing?
The best I've gotten so far is a 928 at 153 miles an hour.
That's cooking.
Yeah, it's definitely moving. I've got a couple tricks up my sleeve here. I'm trying to get it into the eights. I think the last time I took it out, it was spinning the tires, which it never did before. It always hooked really nicely. So I took a bunch of weight out of the car, and now it's spinning the tires. So I'm hoping here in the next couple weeks to get some VHT on the tires. I'm still trying to run the stock tires on it. I'd like to be able to run an 8 on stock tires, aftermarket wheels, but stock tires. So the track's going to allow us to spray VHT on the tires, and we're going to run it and hopefully can get it into the eights.
Yeah. So this is a newbie question, but what's VHG?
VHT. It's
VHT.
a sticky compound that they spray on the drag strip. You normally see them spraying track, but I've heard different things as far as if tracks care if you spray it on your tires or not ahead of time. But we've asked, and they're cool with it here. They're pretty laid back, good people that run the drag strip. Everybody wants to see everybody run fast. So as long as everybody's being safe, they're fine with it. So yeah, okay. It'll add some stickiness to get the car out of the hole without spinning.
Yeah. I've only ever seen that stuff on the track itself.
Yeah.
Never thought about spraying it directly to the tires, but makes sense. So I'm assuming, and tell me if this is not how it went, but I'm assuming that at some point you were driving that P85 and you're going, this is pretty fast. This is pretty cool. And then you see another Supra and you connect the dots and think maybe I could combine these two. Is that kind of how it happened? And
yeah. So I like I said, the Supra was my first love. And then when we got this P85, I love that thing, just the looks, but the performance, the instant torque that they have. If you, the people in the Supra community know, a lot of these guys like me run a big turbo on that car, and they're laggy. You really have to wait for the power, or, be in the right gear and the right RPM to not have the lag. So to drive something that at any RPM, not that it has really RPM. Well, the motor does have RPM.
Yeah.
But at any speed, you can punch it and the car immediately responds. You don't have to downshift or anything like that. I kind of looked at it and said, man, it's kind of, I want to take the best from both of these cars and combine them. I love the body of the Supra. I love the instant torque of the Tesla. I don't like the weight of the Tesla. I like the weight of the Supra. So let's combine this and get the best of everything and leave the shortcomings behind. That's kind of how it started. And I was just looking for, a project. Most of my cars, especially when I lived back on the mainland, they were shop built cars, and the shops were doing a lot of my maintenance. Once I moved out here, I had to take over a lot of that stuff. So it's been a bit of a learning curve for me. But I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to do a build of my own for once. You hear so many people talk about this built, not bought. That's a phrase I hear a lot. And I still don't get it, because now I've bought a number of cars and I've built a car, and I'll buy one any day building one. I don't know what the guys that are bragging about that they built it over buying it, because it is a headache. I get the sense of accomplishment that comes with building something yourself. So I can totally respect that, but the headaches that come with it, man, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it.
I can totally relate with that. I used to work on my own car. Back some years ago, I had a turbo Eclipse, like a 2G. The all-wheel drive GSX.
I love those. Yeah.
It was really fun when it was running.
Yes.
Not reliable. And but I learned everything I know about mechanics by forums and working on that car, starting with like changing my own oil, ultimately new turbo, new long block, all building the driveline. So learned a lot. And I discovered that I didn't really enjoy the mechanics like some people did. And I think it's just some people love the erector set. They love to get in there and manipulate the components, and that's what gets them most excited. For me, at this point in my life, I've discovered that I love the driving more than the wrenching. And so
Yeah,
I would be perfectly happy to buy as well.
yeah, I'm 100% on board with you. Yeah, there's a lot of those guys that say like, "Oh, my garage is my Zen place and my peaceful place." Like, there's nothing peaceful about it. I'm that guy going out there thinking I have a 30-minute project ahead of me, and 4 hours later, I've got way more things torn apart, and I'm ripping my hair out. So
I'm so impressed by those guys that can do that, though. I was interviewing the folks from Evolve Racing a couple weeks ago, and Keith in that episode, he's just like, I don't really track or write things down. I just kind of build it in my head and I go out and I do it. I'm just like floored. Like, man, that's such a skill, and I do not have that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to have that skill.
That's all right. We all bring something to the table, and sometimes putting all the pieces together, right? That may be not my skill, but I'm glad to know there are people like that, and they can look at me when I try and go, "No, that's wrong." And I go, "Okay."
Yeah.
So the Supra build, though, what sort of components did you put together? How did you decide to go about? I mean, there's batteries, there's motors, there's controllers, battery.
Yeah. So when I started the project, it was probably, I'm guessing, close to 3 years ago now.
Okay.
I just started kind of reaching out to different shops that were doing this, like EV West, EV, those type of shops. And I told them, like, hey, I'm looking to do this swap. It has to be fast. That's kind of my thing. I can't, you can't electric swap a Supra and have it be slow. The Supras have a history and of being fast.
Yeah.
People think of fast cars. When they think of a Supra, they think of a fast car. So I said it had to be fast. That's kind of my number one goal. I'm willing to sacrifice other things as long as it's fast. And ultimately, Matt at Stealth EV worked with me and put me a package together for the performance large drive unit out of an S or an X, and a 90 kilowatt pack out of an S or an X as well. And then we went with an Orion BMS to control it, Matt's DC to DC converter charger, and just it all showed up as a package. He built me basically a package. He's like, here's everything you need, all the wiring, all the harnesses that I would need, contactors. He knows his stuff. That guy is smart. He's super, super busy, so he's hard to get support from. But he's been around this stuff, I would say, longer than most people. Cool. So he knows his stuff. And he built me kind of a as much of a turnkey package, I think, as you can get, and sent it all in a box. And we started cutting up the rear end of the car to, we actually, instead of, a lot of guys will just use the drive unit. We actually ordered the whole rear subframe from a Model S or X and placed the whole subframe up under there, kind of like Kevin with the electric did. Because it seemed like the path of least resistance for us. I don't know if it's really the best way to do it. I think probably mounting the motor up under there is with a custom subframe is probably the better way to do it. But it was what we could do. So that's how we went. And the major downside is it just really made the Supra wider than I really wanted to be, because the Model SX that subframe is about 6 inches wider than the stock Supra one is. So you have to pick up 6 inches, which we've done with a wide body kit and then messing with the offset of the wheels.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
You were able to manage it.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm curious, did you run into issues getting the batteries shipped? I was talking to another couple folks who are doing EV builds in Hawaii. I'm not sure if it's the same island, but they had a tough time getting the batteries.
It's the first two times I didn't have any trouble. Matt shipped them to me with no issues. And then I bought some batteries for a guy that I was repairing his EV bug that he's on island here. And we had to replace his battery pack. He had 5 Tesla modules. And I was working with a company out of Phoenix, and they shipped batteries over, no problem. I recently tried to buy some new batteries for the Supra as an upgrade and through EV West, and they said, well, we can't ship those to Hawaii. So I guess there is some companies that are having an issue, but I just found, I reached out to, it's like Associated Logic, I think is the name of the company. But they said, oh yeah, we can ship these. I said, okay, they're used lithium ion batteries out of cars. Sure, there's no issue. And they said, no problem. So I think they just have to do a little bit more digging. It can definitely be done.
Interesting. Well, that's good to know for anyone who's listening who might be in that situation. It maybe isn't a complete logjam. There's a way. You just have to dig a bit.
Yeah, it's like anything else. You know, if you have the money and you're determined, you can do it. That's how this car exists.
And so you put it all together, and it's driving, it's rolling, it's running. It's been fun. How was it?
Yeah, it was doing all those things. It's not now, unfortunately. But yeah, it took probably, I'd say, about a year for me to get it moving under its own power. And man, that was an exciting moment. The first time, I still have it in my garage. I have a big whiteboard where I keep track of everything that I'm working on. And we still have the date written on there and the time that that car moved under its own power for the first time. So it was super exciting. I took it and did an SCCA event with it and have done a little bit of back road driving. Definitely not as much driving as I should have. But I was having a little bit of trouble getting full power. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit of trouble. I could not get full power out of the batteries to the drive unit. There was some issue with the BMS, I'm assuming. Orion was having trouble figuring it out. They couldn't figure out why. Wanted me to purchase some additional equipment to try to troubleshoot it. And I was kind of thinking, you know, I'm just ready to kind of move on to the next step. But yeah, I think we put a few 100 miles on it. It should have been more than that, but those few 100 miles were nothing but smiles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody that's kind of an EV hater and thinks that they don't have emotion or anything like that, it's like, you know, ride with me and try not to smile and, you know, grab onto the door bar because you will be. And, you know, I know some gas guys here that are, you know, OG gas guys, and they go in it and they've driven it and they came back with big smiles on their face and can appreciate, you know, the strengths that an EV has, especially when it's a powerful, lightweight EV.
You're kind of paying it forward from the experience your brother put you through, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, you know, I like to try to steer the conversation on EVs to facts instead of so much, you know, people repeating something that they hear on the internet, you know, and they didn't experience it firsthand. I have no problem with people disliking EVs. I just want them to have that opinion based on their own experiences. Because I don't like every car out on the road, but I shouldn't like something unless I at least give it a shot, give it a chance. So yeah, I've definitely gone out of my way at a lot of the Cars and Coffee events here. I've told people, hey, come find me at the Cars and Coffee event and I'll take you for a ride in this car or in the Plaid and form your own opinion, for better or worse. You don't like it, feel free to tell me. But yeah, it's hard not to like something that's fast, whether it's gas powered, electric powered, whatever powers it. If it's fast, it interests me. Other people maybe they need more. But yeah, to me, it's kind of a one thing. If it's fast, I'm excited about it.
Heck yeah. That's exactly the same kind of position that I'm at as well. I respect all different types of cars, and it's really cool and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I like driving and performance.
Yeah,
And the EVs check the box there.
they do.
And,
Yep.
there's a lot of like false sort of choices that are put out there, like this or that. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be any of that. Just drive what you're enjoying, have fun, go fast, take it right to the track, take it to car shows, have a good time.
Yep.
So what about the weight? You added a bunch of batteries into the Supra. You said it's lightweight still. Did you gain any weight at all?
I would say it's lightweight compared to when you compare it to a Tesla. Yeah. The last time I weighed it with all the batteries in it, with it running, it weighed 3,600 pounds. A stock Mark IV Supra, in the configuration this was a twin turbo 6-speed car. So I think they're at like 3,450 stock. So 150 pounds heavier than stock. It is a gutted car, but it has a very involved cage in it for racing. So there's a lot in there. But I think what your typical Model S or Model X is, flirting with like 5,000 pounds now, right?
Yeah.
So to be at 3,600, I was pretty happy about that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Do you have the full pack in there?
Yeah, there's a 90 kilowatt pack in there. The car doesn't have a lot of creature comforts like, a lot of other guys are doing. There's no AC in there or heat. I don't need that. We're in Hawaii. So don't have that. Didn't have power steering on it. It'd be nice to have power steering. I would admit that, but it's not something. I have a couple of my other my 90s cars don't have power steering. The NSX didn't come with it, and the RX-7 is LS swapped, so it doesn't have power steering either. So I'm kind of used to the car a little bit. It's not that big of a deal to me, but I think in this next go around, we will probably add power steering to it. But yeah, losing those things and along with the interior really cut down on the weight.
Yeah. I want to get into the next round, but as a lead into that, any lessons learned in those 300 miles or in the assembly? What we're driving towards here is you're rebuilding it, but I'm really curious, what are the things that you noticed that made you go, all right, I need to like kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit and do this differently?
I'd say there's nothing really major that stands out to me as like, oh, I really wish this was done differently. I made a ton of mistakes. They were all, I think, mistakes that are reasonable for a newbie, which is what I was.
Sure.
Experience in this, normal mistakes that they would make. I had a lot of frustrating mistakes where we lost a month or two at a time over something insanely stupid. Like the car would not charge for a while. Like the DC to DC converter charger was not working to charge the 12-volt battery while you were driving. So we could plug the car in and charge it, but as the car ran, it would draw down the 12-volt system. And we couldn't figure out why. I put my voltmeter on it. I'm testing everything. It looks fine. And it came down to a bad circuit breaker. And when you put the voltmeter on it, it would test just fine. Like it was working, but I guess under a load, it would fail, but it wouldn't open the breaker. So you didn't know it failed. And the only way I finally found out after, a month or two of replacing wires and, I was about to replace the charger itself, which is an expensive component. Matt at Stealth EV finally said, what kind of breaker do you have on there? And I told him, he's like, well, I heard somebody got one of those off Amazon and had an issue with it. So just bypass it with a wire. Just like that, it worked. You have a $20 circuit breaker that something internal and it's messed up. So it's such an easy fix, but you lose a month or two and probably a couple years off my life of stress trying to figure out something so stupid. And an experienced person probably would have, I reached out to Matt about it, and that was, one of the first things he threw out there after I had, had all this trouble with it. So, somebody with some experience, it's so valuable, right? And I learned a lot of those things the hard way. But yeah, my biggest, I guess, learning process, I learn by doing things. I hate researching, which in this instance is tough because you're really trying to figure out how to do these things when it's getting a lot better. But 3 years ago, when I started doing this, there were very few people doing it. Finding that information was really tough, but it was a lot of kind of trial and error. Lot of hours in the garage figuring things out after, getting it wrong a few times.
Well, you put in the time, that's for sure.
I most certainly have.
Stupid simple.
Yeah. That's just, like I said, that's how I do things. I don't want to spend all these hours researching, and sometimes, of course, you have to, and it is the better way. But my way is just kind of get in there and figure it out and refuse to give up.
That grit is admirable. Yeah. So what are you getting in there and doing now? It's back up on stands?
Yep. It's pretty much all stripped down now. Nothing is left inside the car. We did recently just paint the outside of the car, and now we kind of got three things on the plate right now. We stripped everything out of the inside of the car and kind of getting that ready for paint. Then the front of the car, we're setting up. We're going to add another large drive unit, another performance large drive unit to the front and power the front wheels.
Okay.
Quick, but it's not fast. I'm sure a lot of people that are, into 400 or 500 horsepower cars, something like that would say, yeah, this is a fast car. It's no slouch, but anybody that's ridden in like a P85 knows that, okay, yeah, this is pretty quick out of the hole. And then around 60, it definitely starts to fall off. As far as lighter, but it definitely, you still feel that fall off at 60. I think a lot of that's the battery sag that you see with these Tesla packs.
Yeah.
So we are adding another performance large drive unit to power the front wheels. And we're basically replacing everything. I don't think at this point, the only thing that I think we are keeping from the original setup is, we're not touching the rear subframe and large drive unit back there, besides switching out the inverter board. It has one of the Stealth EV inverter boards in it, but we'll be switching that out to an AEM and then running AEM's VCU 300 to control both drive units. And then the Orion will still monitor the batteries. But besides that, keeping that Orion and the large drive unit in the back, everything's getting replaced. We ripped out all the wiring. I kind of thought, I figured out how to do this. Now we can do this much cleaner, much more professional. Even all the wiring went. So it feels like we're back to where I was 2 or 3 years ago, which is a little tough knowing how little we drove it. But it's hard for me to drive something when I'm not, like I said, we couldn't get full power out of it. We were getting about 70% power out of it. And I have a hard time enjoying it when it's like, this isn't performing optimally. So, why am I driving it? Either fix it or, don't drive it.
Yeah.
So we did to me, the ultimate fix, which is add the extra motor, switch out to a much stiffer battery, switch over to all AEM stuff, and, be able to go real fast.
Yeah. So for perspective though, did you take it to the track with just the rear motor and run it?
I took it to the SCCA track, the little road course that we have.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun there. I did not take it to the drag strip.
Okay.
I have a drag device. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just used that on the road. And, I think, trying to remember what it did 0 to 60. I want to say it was like a high 4-second. 0 to 60 is kind of my recollection. I could be wrong on that, but that was also, I was, like I said, I was only able to discharge 1,000 amps is what it was limiting me at, which that performance drive unit will take 1,400, and those batteries will discharge that. So it was disappointing being down on the power. So I'm down on power, and it was also me kind of rolling into it at the time. It was still fairly new, and I was a little bit nervous just to stomp on the accelerator pedal.
Yeah. There's configuration and dialing it all in as well,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yeah. My tuner, Ian at Bend Calibration, has been the guy for that. He built my other Supra about 8 years ago when I blew the motor up in that. He rebuilt that car, and he does all the tuning for all my other cars. And he was actually out here visiting me a couple of years ago, and I had just bought the Supra, the EV Supra, as a rolling shell. And I had just gotten all the stuff from Matt at Stealth EV, and he didn't really know anything about it. Yes, a lot of my buddies, they're Supra buddies. When you're about to EV swap a Supra, you're a little bit nervous to tell them, like, hey, this is what I'm up to. Not sure if they're gonna disown you. But most awesome. Just they're appreciative. They like that somebody's still, modifying Supras and that you're doing something different. There's a couple people that are bitter about it, but the way I look at it is, it was a rolling shell. I put another Supra back on the road. I didn't take a Supra off the road. I put one back on the road. Yeah, with under different power, but I put it back on the road. But anyways, my tuner was out here visiting, and I showed him what I was doing, and to my surprise, he was all about it. He kind of volunteered to help. I'm not sure he's too happy about volunteering to help at this point, with how much hand holding he's had to do. I've relied on him so much. I'd still probably not have the car running if it wasn't for him. So he's been great to work with. He really understands computers. I do not. So yeah, I can't thank him enough for everything that he's done.
Big team effort, sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Is there other folks that have leaned in and helped to make this build happen?
Yeah, it's kind of been an all hands on deck because, like I said, I don't have the experience that a lot of these other EV builders have. Some of these other guys are automotive guys, and they're venturing over into the EV space. So they have at least that base knowledge, which I don't have. And then you have other guys that have an electrical background. So I felt like I was starting from nothing. So it's definitely been, an all hands on deck sort of thing. I have, like I said, Ian at Bend Calibration, who's been doing so much of the heavy lifting and kind of telling me like, hey, here's what you need to do. He lives in Oregon. So, it's hard for him to help, but he's kind of saying, hey, here's what needs to happen. And then I got to go out there and actually do all the wiring and everything. But I also have a couple local guys, Mike and Madison Key. Those guys have been over here helping me with a lot of the wrenching. Also, a gentleman named Evan Moniz. He's a local guy that does a lot of painting. So he was a lot of time over here recently getting the outside painted. And he will be back over here to help paint the inside now that it's all cleaned up and ready to go. My fabricator, Shane at 207 Customs. I'm not a fabricator. I can barely weld, but luckily I have him. And I kind of take some stuff over to him and say, "Here's my bad idea," and he said, "I will make it happen." So he's been great. Also guys like Kevin with Project Electrolyte, Will from Throttle. Those guys have been awesome. You know, I love the EV space still because everybody wants to see everybody succeed still. I hope it doesn't go away. I feel like it probably will as it gets bigger, but still right now, all these big EV guys still seem to want to help some guy that like me that has no idea what he's doing. And they're probably, you know, I'm asking questions and they're probably just shaking their head going, oh, how does this guy not know this? But they still are willing to help. And then a couple other people I want to mention, the guys at G&J Aircraft in California, those guys helped me with all my brake setup, building all custom lines for me. The guys at Bulletproof Automotive and Unplugged Performance, they've supplied me with body kits and other parts. And then finally, I just started working with John at Lone Star EV Performance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but
no, I haven't heard yet.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He's kind of the guy you want to talk to if you want to go real fast in an EV. He has supplied battery packs for all the fastest EVs that are out there. He's built a number of dragsters that are EV powered. So guys like Steve Huff, and Don Garlitz, they're EV drag racers. They've got their battery packs from John at Lone Star EV Performance. So in the last few months, as I've been trying to find the right battery to power 2 Tesla large drive units, I spent an enormous amount of hours trying to research all the different batteries. And I've told you before, I don't like doing much research. So it was a bit of a challenge. And a lot of the information is not out there. You know, you start looking at these Pacifica packs that a lot of people are using and finding data sheets on those batteries for me was impossible. I don't know if somebody else has them and they, you know, are keeping them in their pocket sort of thing, but actually finding, you know, manufacturer information is really, really hard. And I looked at all this stuff and it was, you know, like I said, pretty frustrating. And right at the end, when we were about to pull the trigger on using the Pacifica batteries, I reached out to John at Lone Star EV Performance, and he's building us a battery pack that is going to be a monster. The only downside is it won't have a lot of range, but that's not what I'm doing with this car. You know, it's not built to, drive around town. It still will. It'll probably have a range of about 60 miles, but it will be able to power both of these large drive units beyond what they will take. I'll have enough power on tap to control both of those at full power, and the pack itself will weigh probably about 400 pounds. So we're dropping 500 pounds worth of weight off our battery pack.
Wow.
We'll put this car close to, slightly over 3,000 pounds, I think, and, should have all the power that we need. So
you have a benchmark you're trying to hit?
I want to run. So when we originally built this car, the goal was I want to outrun my other Supra. That was the goal. That other Supra the best I've run is a 10.8. So I've done that with just the single motor that I had before. So that was the goal. Putting 2 motors in, it would have done that easily. But once I picked up a Plaid, I was like, well, that's the new goal, is now we got to outrun this thing. So it's got this Supra is going to have to run into the 8s for me to achieve my goal.
But if your Plaid goes into the 8s, then you're moving the mark for yourself.
Yeah. Yep. So
it's going to have to go deeper into the 8s.
Yeah, absolutely. So my Plaid, if I'm lucky here, we'll find out hopefully at the next drag event. Hopefully I can get into the 8s. It's not going to go deep into the 8s. I think if I can get it into the 8s, it'll just barely get in there. The Supra with my kind of napkin math will actually have a little bit more horsepower than the Plaid does. And it'll also weigh 1,500 pounds less. Now, I think the Plaid is probably more efficient with all its battery technology as far as cooling and heating the batteries to the optimal level. I'm not running any cooling or heating on the batteries.
Really?
So ambient temperature. Yeah. So I'll leave a little bit on the table there. There's definitely some areas where, Tesla knows what they're doing, and it'll have some strengths. It'll have, better traction as well. I definitely don't think I will be able to give it full power out of the hole. But I'm hoping by at least like the 60 foot, we'll be able to, dial in all the power on the front motor. My guess is we'll be able to give it full power with the rear motor out of the hole, but have to dial it in at about the 60 foot. But that's my tuner's problem. He'll deal with that.
Are you going to have it set to kind of have like drag mode where it brings the power on in a very specific way to try and get that, but then maybe the daily mode, if you want to use that 60 miles to get groceries?
Yeah. And again, that's where the tuning comes into. You hear so many people say like, oh, you can't tune an EV. It's like, well, it's just not true. There will definitely be some of that. And now that AEM is producing these VCUs, you can really start to mess with all that stuff. And there's some interesting things that I'm hoping we're going to be able to do, like being able to run just one of the drive units. Like if I take it to an SCCA day and I want to drift the car a little bit, we can disable the front drive unit via the push of a button and just go rear wheel drive.
Cool.
Yeah. So you'd be using all-wheel drive, obviously, for the drag strip. But yeah, at SCCA, it's a little bit more fun, I think, to have a rear-wheel drive car so you could run it in rear-wheel drive. Or, if you want to run it in front-wheel drive, you can do that. And I think there is some possibilities in, like I said, extending the range for when I drive it on the street of maybe just running one of the drive units.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would work, but we'll play with it and figure it out. But yeah, I'm excited for the AEM. The using the Orion stuff before with the drive unit, you have very, very little control over the drive unit. And with AEM getting on board now, there's a lot of control over it. I'm hoping to even try to put one of those drive units in forward and one in reverse, and do a burnout watching the car try to tear itself apart, something crazy like that. So we'll see. I think I don't see why that shouldn't be able to happen if you're willing to kind of abuse the stuff a little bit. Sure. That you could do it.
It's kind of some cool full circle as well, since AEM is well known in the electronic space for controlling ICE cars. And I bet you there's a lot of AEM computer ECUs in Supras.
Yeah.
And now it's
absolutely.
coming back.
Yeah. I own a couple of them in a couple of my cars.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
For that 60-mile range, you think about usable 60 miles?
That's what I'm hoping for. The John was kind of telling me like he doesn't really build batteries for street cars. All his stuff is for drag racing. So that's why he doesn't even have any cooling. And in Hawaii, I don't think I'll be using that. And the truth is, in drag racing, I'm hoping to make an 8-second pass. You can't circulate your coolant through the system in 8 seconds. So doing it for drag racing doesn't make any sense. I think there is, and we will look into this kind of down the road, I will be recharging during passes just to top it off. And that maybe we would try to add some cooling there, maybe some, cooling system that can be connected and disconnected really quickly to bring the temperature down and recharge the batteries as quick as possible between passes. So instead of having to wait, say 45 minutes between passes, you could get it down to 15 minutes or 30 minutes, something like that. But yeah, driving around on the street with, the temperatures that I see here, I don't live in Phoenix any longer, so I don't have to worry about extremely hot temperatures. And there's not going to be any instance on the street where I'm on full power for 8 seconds like I would be at the drag strip. you're gonna on the street, you'll be lucky if you're on full power for more than 3 or 4 seconds.
Right.
So I can't, at this point, I can't find a need for cooling based specifically on where I live and what I'm doing with the car. Now, if I get into a place where I'm road racing, then yeah, you'd probably need to add something for that. But as it sits, not for what we're doing.
Cool.
No.
Well, if you get into more road racing, or hey, maybe they build a bigger track there, you always have the Plaid. That has some really good cooling in there.
Yep, that's right. I'd love to, I hope they do build a track here. It'd be wonderful. And I'd love to, run the Plaid there, or, build something that's more focused on, road racing instead of drag racing. So.
Yeah. Exciting times.
Absolutely.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, do you have any advice for folks who are just generally interested in EVs, or maybe want to embark upon building their own collection, cars or EVs or otherwise? Any words of wisdom from someone who's done so much?
Well, if anybody's hearing that, they're already taking the first step, and that's listening to this podcast, or watching this video. They're already expanding their knowledge. But man, I would say to anybody that's interested in doing this, don't be like me. Don't be so stubborn as far as doing your research, because man, it's the expensive way to do it. I built this car once, and like I said, I haven't really thrown it away, but it kind of feels like it when you tear all the wiring out and everything like that you're kind of throwing it away. The good news is I almost have a turnkey system for another vehicle to be able to electric swap something else. More of a daily driving type thing. I just need to basically at this point buy another motor, and I'd have what I'd need. But man, do your research. Spend the time on YouTube. There's a number of forums. Don't be afraid to reach out to some of these guys. I love people reaching out to me. I always tell them like, hey, I might not be the right guy for this, but I'll definitely try to help anyone. Because like I said, the community is great. They still really want to see other people succeed on this. So just about everybody I've talked to has been willing to answer probably stupid questions that I should know the answer to. But yeah, there's a wealth of information out there. Watching Throttle build their 350Z that they did, because their setup is very similar to my original setup. They were using the same motors, same batteries, same BMS. So a lot of that stuff was the same. And the same thing with Kevin, what he was doing. His system was very similar to mine. I think he's running a 100 kilowatt battery pack, but
I think so too.
I remember when those guys were building theirs, I felt like I was just a couple of months behind them, because I was sitting there waiting for their next video, and they released their next video on how to wire up the BMS. And it's like, oh, this couldn't have got here, any better timing, because I need to wire up my BMS. And now I got to just sit there and watch their video, 10 times over to really let it sink in. And, then once I do that, it's like, okay, I got this issue, and then I can reach out to them with a question. But yeah, just if anybody's out there thinking about doing it, do your homework, because it's not cheap, unfortunately. That's still a big issue. But if you're willing to spend the money and spend the time, the information is out there. You just got to be willing to dig for it.
Well, with any luck, it'll be getting cheaper as more
Absolutely
OEMs are putting out parts. And I think it's really cool when we start looking at, different batteries for the right use, right? You don't,
yes.
Like what you're doing right now, you don't need a 100 kilowatt pack to
Correct,
have a fun track car. And so there's a lot more options to build cars specific for the purpose, and maybe not over engineer them when they don't. So
yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right about building the right car for what you're trying to do. I don't need the extra weight of hauling around 100 kilowatt hours of range on the drag strip. So, that battery pack originally was, just the wrong choice for what I'm trying to accomplish. And you're also right about the prices coming down. I've seen that in the drive units and the batteries already, of prices dropping. And I think you can get away with doing this at a reasonable price as long as you don't want everything under the sun. I was at the old saying with ICE cars was, cheap, fast, and reliable, pick two.
Yep.
And I think the saying for me with EVs is cheap, fast, and range, pick two. Because you don't get all three.
Yeah. I think you're
at least
totally
not yet.
spot on.
Yeah.
Not yet. Batteries are going to get better. It's going to be interesting when solid state actually hits. Whenever that does, it'll happen eventually. And we'll all be redoing the math and going like, oh, wait a minute. I want those now.
Yeah, it's an exciting place to be right now, because you see, I read something every week about, there's this new battery breakthrough, and here's this other technology that doesn't use lithium, or, it's like a salt battery, all these crazy things that, I don't understand, but I just kind of look at it and say, now that everybody is behind this push, it used to be, Tesla was behind this push, and now all the major manufacturers are, and now that everybody's behind it, you are going to just have this stuff grow so rapidly, I think. And in 5 to 10 years, we're going to have batteries that, it's probably closer to 10 years, who knows, but, have half the weight of the battery, but have twice the amount of power in them. And it's just going to continue to make it hard for anybody to look at an ICE vehicle and say that it is on any level better than an EV. And I still love my gas powered cars. I will always love them, but the battery technology is really, I think, the one thing holding up the EV world right now. And once we have much better batteries and you're able to produce a car that weighs, 3,000, 3,500 pounds, has 500 miles worth of range and 1,000 horsepower, it's how do you argue with that?
How do you not want that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I went into a little bit of a research rabbit hole on Reddit. People smarter than me post there. And so I was interested in what's the theoretical power to kilowatt power to weight of batteries. And so there are some threads where people are talking about that. And my takeaway was that they can calculate the theoretical efficiency and characteristics and chemistry of it, even though we can't build it right now, or it's not economical to build it. And so that shows we actually have quite a long ways to go to maximize these things out. We just need to keep building more, and then that incremental efficiency happens. Nice thing about batteries is once they're not good for cars, you put them on the grid, you recycle them. They're now there. They don't disappear like burning gas. So
yeah,
I thought that was pretty exciting to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be fun to watch. And I think it's going to be so much more fun modifying a former gas powered car to an EV in the future instead of now, because you're going to have, right now it's a struggle, to find room. If you're going to go, if you want a good amount of range and you want to go with a 75 or higher kilowatt battery pack, physically finding the space to put that in an ICE car is a challenge.
Yeah.
So when we get this newer battery technology and the package is half the size, it's going to open up a lot more vehicles to being swapped and not having to give up so much, like a Miata, for instance. I know guys are swapping Miatas, but where do you put those batteries in those things? It forces you into a small battery pack. I haven't seen anybody put a Tesla pack in a Miata, and I hope I get to see it. But I just don't know where in the world you'd put all that. But yeah, in the future, I think we will get to see it, because these packs will be smaller and way more efficient.
Totally agree. Well, with that, I think we need to wrap up, and I can let you get back to working on that Supra. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.